Good day and welcome to this session entitled Achievements and Aspirations, Reflecting on 2023 and Predicting 2024. I'm Gary Perkins with CISO Global, the company that believes cybersecurity is a culture, not a product. And I'll be your host today. I'm pleased to be joined with some amazing talent from CISO Global. We've got Chris Clements, our VP of Solutions Architecture, and Jerald Dawkins, our Chief Technology Officer, here for you today. We're going to cover some observations from 2023 and paint a picture of what you can expect in 2024. I'm sure we're going to talk about cloud and AI. And if you were at the last session I did on PCI, I'd asked ChatGPT for some PCI jokes, and the turnout was abysmal. And so naturally, backed by popular demand, I just had to check if we could do better for AI or NLG. So you be the judge. I told ChatGPT its first ones were terrible and to give me some good NLG jokes, and this is what it came back with. Why did the natural language generator break up with the data? And the answer, because it couldn't stand its constant verbosity and always over-explaining things. Oh, I'm starting to think that the comedians are safe from AI replacing their jobs. Humor does not seem to be something that AI has cracked, but I have to balance this with a decent one. And Chris gave me this one right before we began. He asked, what are a CISO's two greatest fears? One is everyone who works at the company, and the second one is everyone who doesn't. So I get that. I can appreciate that one. I hear that one every day. Yeah, so I feel that one. So anyway, on this session, we're going to be happy to take your questions provided there's time. But please note, there's about a 1 minute delay between what you hear on the line and what we have a chance of seeing that you've written in chat. And this content today is going to be available after the session. And if you're enjoying this session right now, tuned in, feel free to tell your friends what they're missing during or after. Now, I know you joined for the content today. We want this to be as interesting as possible, rather than just another talk on how the internet's a scary place with bad people who do bad things. What if I told you that $6 trillion is lost to cybercrime every year, and that approximately $224 billion was spent on this year alone on cybersecurity? I'm sure that a lot of that spend is on cybersecurity talent, if they're even able to find it, and then maintaining the 76 tools on average that organizations have. I'll start with some of my own observations, just an initial one to kick us off, and then I'll turn it over to anybody who wants to comment. But what I've seen through 2023 is organizations continue to struggle to maintain the cybersecurity basics. Some organizations still in 2023 think they can fly below the radar and go unnoticed. I'm telling you right now, in case you're wondering, in 2023 and forward, you need to have a modern endpoint security solution. You can't be rocking that signature-based antivirus that you had in the late 90s. You got to have modern email security. You must have MFA in place to stop 99% of the automated attacks. And you got to have mandatory security training for your employees. That's just a start. Those are some of the absolute basics. You got to be this tall to ride if you want to be connected to the internet for long and not pose a threat to the rest of us. So doing the basics well is going to help you stop so many of those attacks. I mean, how are they getting in? Unpatched vulnerabilities, and then humans, of course, where the technology is not letting them in. Lately, it's been a lot of QR codes, which if you can appreciate, despite all the security controls you have in place, those QR codes get on just an employee's screen. They're going to scan it with their phone or the one you provided them, or maybe their personal one, and may not even be protected fully by your enterprise. And so if the technology doesn't give way, the humans typically do. And I think it's in 2024, it's safe to assume we're going to see more organizations failing to do the minimum for security, and that's a shame. I'd like to do everything I can to combat that. Now, from time to time, you see these claims that so many of the vulnerabilities being exploited are not even new. They're not even bothering to use the 0 days. Like, why would attackers want to do any more work than necessary? If organizations aren't patching, then don't have to waste a 0 day and just use no vulnerabilities.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you right there. So, in the general terms, yeah, I do agree with you. Cybersecurity is not great in a lot of organizations. And you make a good point. Why burn a 0 day if a simple password-based attack will work, right? But then I look back, just kind of seeing what we saw this year, especially with like the MoveIt breach that we saw there. It wasn't exactly a 0-day, but it was very, very new vulnerability. And the rationale behind that, I mean, think about it. MoveIt had hundreds of customers, thousands of customers. And by using one very powerful exploit, the threat actor was able to, ransomware, hundreds of downstream organizations. And I mean, if we think about, just the investment, you're right. I mean, 0 days can be expensive. They can be hard to develop. But at the same time, I mean, if it cost you, say, $500,000 to buy a 0-day vulnerability or even develop it, but you're going to get 10 million on the back end, I mean, that's just good business, man. So, I do think we're going to see more of those.
Yeah, and I liked what you said earlier. It's the basics. Do the basics. I always see like, and I'll pick a little bit on the 0-day and artificial intelligence and 500 different security tools. It's like everybody wants to go after the sexy thing, and it's always the basic things that always hurt you. I was at a conference last week out in California, and it was a great conversation. We were talking about multi-cloud hosting or multi-cloud movement to multi-cloud. We talked about infrastructure as code and some of this kind of emerging things, and I was just reminded of and maybe I'm dating myself, but there was something called XACML. It was extensible access control meta language, and it was essentially infrastructure as code, is policy as code. And so sometimes I'm listening to some of these talks, and everybody's going to the extremes and like this the cool thing of the time. And really at the heart of it, and you look at the attacks, it's not patching. It's user awareness training. It's the very boring, unsexy things that is causing a lot of the problems.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from that is Chris says that the cyber criminals went to school and got their MBAs and appreciate a good business decision, and that from Jerry, security is going to get even more sexy than it already is. I can't even imagine that because I might be slightly biased, but I think security is the sexiest thing out there. So obviously within 2023, we saw a number of organizations breached. Boeing, Okta, 23andMe, Sony, Discord, Reddit, MGM, and Caesars doesn't even begin to touch the long list of organizations. And it's fair to assume that many of these organizations were making investments and maybe they were doing the basics, but despite that, the attackers found a way in. So it's pretty obvious we can't let our guard down yet, even though it's the holiday. It's time for some cheer, like it's going in the office right here, right now. But the fraudsters are out there in full force and going to be trying to take advantage. I'll go forward with another one of my observations. I mean, some of these are playing it pretty safe, but obviously, cloud security is going to be of the utmost importance, but I think there's going to continue to be more cloud breaches, not just those self-induced ones that organizations are failing to take advantage of the security controls made available to them in Azure and AWS. When somebody goes in there and spins up a VM and then instantly unloads the firewall policy, and that makes things work, and so then they leave it like that because they don't want to break it. They did that to themselves. They had perfectly good defaults and things, and that was one of the other observations, is that the one thing that's being good at with leveraging cloud was the defaults, and our tolerance for some of these legacy encryption and other bad practices were creating by default this greater security standard. And that's good because we're increasingly putting the crown jewels there. But I think we're going to see more cloud providers getting knocked over themselves rather than the clients themselves.
I think the complexity in the cloud in general. What's your thoughts on multi-cloud? Are you for or against it? And that was kind of the debate at the conference that I had, and and I can certainly, my argument was I kind of classical cybersecurity CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So from the standpoint of confidentiality and integrity, you start adding complexity in multiple clouds and multiple different types of architectures. You're adding to that complexity, which from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's bad. But from an availability standpoint, you might have it.
100%.
You know, it's a resiliency thing. You know, you're not dependent. And I think that there's one thing that we've seen in the past over, you know, it's supply chain. Supply chain continues to be, you know, a prominent threat. And how do you address that? So, you know, I think it's a good debate.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
think,
you're
you
gonna
know,
have a choice really, but Chris, go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, it's cloud and SaaS. I mean, it's all eating the business world, right? I mean, just about everything we do, our core business functions, they're no longer on our networks, right? They're all delivered to us as software as a service. And I mean, I just keep coming back to it. That is such an attractive vector. If you are a threat actor that has some skill, why wouldn't you go after that? I mean, that seems like the biggest payout.
Shh, Chris, don't give them any ideas. They might be listening. It's true. You stick all of your crown jewels, your eggs in one basket, and then it's going to make a really enticing target, perception or reality. And so, yeah, you're going to have that resilience. You can't have it such that your business is down if one cloud provider fails to be available, because we've seen it, right? It's the availability is not 100%. And then when they do have a problem, the impacts are practically global, at least national. So if Teams is unavailable, suddenly nobody is doing any meetings. So we're gonna have to have that level of resilience. Now, obviously, a lot more is spent on cloud security than any one individual organization can afford. So I'm sure that they're going to be self-healing, things like that. So another prediction that I've got.
Self-healing.
Oh,
I'm having flashbacks to the old Cisco, you know, advertising days, self-healing networks. You know, the one thing that I will say, like multi-cloud or cloud in this whole movement is, you know, and this is an area that CISO Global has been really focused on, is kind of this zero trust architecture. And I think there is an architecture, you know, with edge computing and cloud, and so I think there's a good architecture to be constructed that enables you to both be secure, to centralize, to track, to monitor, and have all those capabilities. But I think it's going to take, you know, forethought, and so I think you're going to see some of those architectures in the upcoming years.
yeah, obviously zero trust is going to continue to be a thing. I still view it's like a new name for old thing.
It is,
because here's a
attack
secret.
surface management. We can play this game all.
I never
Least
trusted
privilege.
anything to begin with, man. That's how I managed to look pretty good at what I do. So I was doing zero trust before it was a thing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we're going to continue to see. I think we're going to continue to see IT folks failing to communicate in a way that executives are in danger of paying attention. There's just, you know, every time they go forward with, you know what we really need? We need DLP in our DMZ for PCI. There's like, nobody talks like that. It's not even English. And I feel really sorry for anybody who understood what I just said. Not that it's a requirement like that. But anyways, it's like, give some thought as to what keeps them up at night. The network being down. Well, why? Ask the 5 whys. See, that's one thing that they could learn from the old business school.
You know,
what else do you
one
think?
thing, one thing that I know that the bosses are going to continue to do is that they're going to somehow need more gift cards. I think that's going to continue to be a real need from a lot of bosses, strangely. No, your boss is never going to ask you to buy a gift card. Don't do that.
You mean the guy that sent me a notice that's not real from our CEO?
I got the same one. That's
like days after joining, I got this one. Are you busy right now? I have an urgent task for you. Imagine the audacity. Anyways, yeah, I strung him along for a while.
On the one thing on, and this is something that, like, man, if I pulled up, you know, a talk from 2002, it probably was on that list, and it's still on that list. So maybe and it's what you just said. It's like, as technical people, we've got to learn how to communicate at a board level. We have to be able to learn how to communicate at an executive level, and we can't use PCI, DLP, whatever else you said, right? That's not the way they communicate. But I think that's always been one of the real challenges, and I haven't really seen much movement. You know, we try to throw risk management and risk assessment and try to articulate things in a risk posture. I've seen a lot of bad research that attempts to put some sort of financial, and it just seems like we continue to fail. Is next year, this coming year, the year that we're going to fix that problem, or is it going to still be on there? Compliance is always a big driver. I always have one of the key things I always said is compliance doesn't equal security, and I think everybody agrees compliance doesn't mean you're secure. But my rebuttal to that is security does equal compliance. If you're focused on security, I guarantee you'll address any regulatory compliance obligations. So thinking about things like that, I think is a good step to kind of overcoming some of those challenges.
Yeah,
I
well,
think that's
on the IT one,
yeah, it's a
just
great
give me
point.
one.
I think the compliance is only as good as the rules, right? It's only as good as the requirements. I mean, if the requirements and the rules themselves aren't up to snuff, and most aren't, then yeah, being compliant just on its own isn't going to do a whole lot for you. Gary, quick aside, that I did find out that hacker that sent you that text, he did get a ticket from the park ranger, though. Yeah, it turns out he didn't have his fishing license. Okay. Sorry.
Oh man, this is bad. This is bad. We're gonna earn a reputation. Oh man. Just going back, sorry, Jerry, you said a couple of things that piqued my interest. Because what happens when the IT folks, like, so by now the board and the executive, they're aware that they need to do something about security. This is a board, this is a board level topic for sure. And then they go to their team to find out, well, what should we do? Like, give me some comfort. How are we doing? And then where do we need to invest? And that's where there's that next failure to communicate. Then what I've seen in the past is, well, since I'm not getting the answer that I need here, I'm just going to go and buy insurance and make an attempt to transfer this risk. And so cyber insurance is an area of interest, because one of the predictions that we have in the future here is that you're going to see, and I mean, some of it's already happening, which is reducing the premiums there by showing and demonstrating that you're doing adequate security. And I think that that's pretty compelling, because effectively imagine there's probably a tipping point at which the security, the investments that you're making and the premiums you're paying, at least you're getting a discount, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that argument. One of the challenges, and if we're kind of riffing off of cyber insurance, I think one of the key challenges that I've seen, at least when I was kind of looking at this past year, the increase in ransomware, the increase of payments to ransomware. So this is a fundable exercise. So the more cyber insurance we're taking, cyber insurance is paying the ransomware. That's what they're for. And so it's I don't know, it's creating a problem in this particular space. I agree with you that I would love to see premiums reduced or offset or supplemented in some way. I think the cyber insurance space, it's still going through a lot of changes, and I've seen a lot of changes over the years. I don't think it's settled in yet. I think they're still trying to figure it out. But I think that they are part of the problem that's exacerbating the ransomware issue.
Yeah, you also mentioned compliance. I thought that was interesting, because we got the new PCI rules coming. We talked about those last time, but also things like CMMC. I'm assuming it's going to take off, but it seems like it's been a little bit of a rocky reception right out of the gate. And one of the other ones that I think really made waves in the industry was SEC reporting rules. Really, are you going to have enough useful information to be able to report in 3 or 4 days? A lot of organizations will not know the extent of the damage. They will not have closed the holes. And I would say, modestly, as an expert in the field, if you are notifying anybody about a problem before you have at least prevented or closed the hole by which the person got in, if you know what that is, that would be truly irresponsible.
What was that recent event where the threat actor actually contacted the SEC to report one of their victims because the victim themselves didn't announce it and they were required to? Oh man, that's dirty pool.
They double hit them. They get a fine. I think that you you remind me of something else that I kind of I've heard. And again, I think it's rebranding some security terms. You were making fun of me on zero trust and rebranding basically least privilege. You know, I'll make fun of pen testing and rebranding attack surface management or vulnerability scanning. There's another term that I think is important, and that's kind of the shift left, right? And it's like the security by design kind of concept and shift left. And so I'm hearing a lot more about DevSecOps and you know, and it's like some of the basic, you know, and so I don't know. It kind of goes back, you know, you guys know me. I'm a big fan of security as a team sport, and it's about collaboration. And really that's I think that's one of the beautiful things within CISO Global is that collaboration. We have the different groups and working together as a team to solve this bigger challenge that is cybersecurity.
Yeah, you triggered me with that DevSecOps because I'll tell you, when I first heard it, I thought, yeah, I love this. It's great. Then I'm like, no, you know what? Forget that. If you're going to do DevOps without security, why don't you call it that? Call it DevOps without security. Because
No
if
security.
you're doing everything else in there, you should be doing the security. I mean, honestly, what are all the security folks trying to do? Every day we come to work and we're trying to work ourselves out of a job poorly. We keep expecting that one day people are going to have a revelation and realize that this is just the way that you should do stuff if you want to stay online. But sadly, I'm not going to have to change careers just yet.
I think you're safe.
Chris, any other predictions or observations from 2023 or 4?
Yeah, I'd say one of the big ones for me is just how much defaults matter. So when we talk about things like zero trust and shift left and all these sorts of things, we're trying to make sure things are secure out of the gate rather than trying to patch them after the fact. And I think we've seen some moves across vendors in the industry that are really pushing this. I mean, I think the mindset has finally shifted from we've got to be compatible at all costs to we need to be secure by default. So I think that is going to make a difference. I mean, we take a look at some of the moves that Microsoft has made, putting in, account lockouts for, local accounts. That's huge, right? How many breaches have you seen that were due directly to that, right? Because local accounts by default, unless you've got an agent on there, that you're not getting those logs in Active Directory. It's not going to trigger an alert. So, just things like that. But, in the same breath, do we think that once those avenues are, effectively extinguished for threat actors, that they're just going to say, oh, the gravy train's over. We're just going to give up. We're going to go find real jobs, right? No, they're not going to do that. I mean, it's going to trigger an arms race, and I think that's where we're going to see more of the N days, the O days, 0 days. Because the reality is bugs aren't going anywhere. I mean, software
back to the
is
0
so
days.
complex. Yeah, it's just going to keep coming around.
You're increasing the price of the 0 days. You're making the basics more challenging. Yeah. That's good stuff.
I agree that's true, that we've got to raise the bar, right? So we can't tolerate the SHA-1s out there, the TLSs, legacy encryption, things like that. But I appreciate that also there's some organizations out there, a lot of public sector, they're trying to make sure that they are able to reach their entire client base in some cases that are running old systems. And if you cut them off because they're running Windows XP or something like that, but I think that at some point it just poses too great of a risk to everybody else to be continuing to support this. It's like, great, we support TLS v3, but we still support all of these other old known bad encryption. It's like it's secure. It's like the false sense of security.
I was going to add one other thing that I was looking at my list here to kind of tap on to something you were saying earlier about CMMC. It's been started, reset, stopped, restarted, stopped. Like it's gone through it, is next year. And they say it is, as of the latest kind of release, they're saying it's going to happen in 2024. So I do think that that's going to have significant, if it actually gets launched, I think you're going to see a ripple down effect. Very similar to, if anybody requires the Y2K days, the ripple effect into the supply chain. As soon as you get some of these big providers and you're gonna I believe you're gonna see that ripple effect because of CMMC. And I don't want to throw the AI thing out there, but we've been involved in the Microsoft Security Copilot kind of pilot program. And I really do believe that those types of tools and some of the capabilities embedding AI into some of the security tools, having AI leverage some of this, I really think it's going to change the way we interact with log data, the way that we do our investigations, the way that we recommend. We're parsing through all this information, the way that we're ingesting threat intelligence. It's just so much out there that it's hard to, we're in the industry. It's hard for us to track everything and be involved in everything. So leveraging a tool like a Copilot to help us expedite that and process that information, I think it's going to be I think it's going to have a tremendous impact moving forward.
Yeah, I agree.
As exciting as I think that is, I think we need to acknowledge that cuts both ways, though. Using a tool like a Copilot for coding, using that for malware engineering, that just makes a lot of sense, right? All of a sudden, that kind of democratizes the ability to write, passable malware. I mean, I've heard it said that AI won't replace good software developers, but good developers that use AI will replace those that don't. And I think that's very true.
That's good. That's good. I'm writing that one down.
That's not mine. I stole it from someone else.
Right on. I think there's huge opportunities there, and I would say that given that the adversaries are using AI, those organizations that aren't will fail. Like they will not be able to keep up. But even as security professional, I think there's huge opportunities with. I'm a big fan of automation or anything that'll make my life easier. And when I'm going through, I'm often having to do some manual commands. And I think that we can pull that information a lot more quickly. So I'm appreciating things like Copilot.
I love, yeah, and just to whenever you're talking about automation, and I think this is the beautiful thing about the cloud, and I think about I think we're going to be moving away from classical risk assessments where it's just paper and it's paper pen tests and and you're moving towards infrastructure as code, policy as code. And so when you're talking about machine readable kind of, and you're talking about AI to help assess, I think there's a lot of potential just in helping the security, the CISO, kind of process what exactly are my risks, where are they? Because some of the issue is like, I don't even know what all my assets are. Like, what are they? Where are they? And it's a real challenge. But the more that, that's one good thing about the cloud is that they're going to charge you for it, so they know it's there. So that inventory is there. So I think that there's a lot that we can leverage from those that I'm looking forward to exploring.
Yeah, I've heard that again by others recently, that standard compliance like that Excel list or checkboxes is probably not going to be the thing. Automated compliance or being able to demonstrate that you were doing these things live, because I don't know if you mentioned it just now, but I think I've heard you say this in the past. It's like, what good is that assessment that was done 6 months ago? What relevance does it bear on today?
Yeah.
Right? Just because somebody was doing those things at that point in time, we've seen this time and time again, is that people struggle to maintain those good security practices if they've ever achieved them in the first place. There really seems to be some level of confusion around what are the mandatories versus the nice to haves. And that's why I've always focused on, here are the things you absolutely got to be doing if you want to maintain those hygiene and compliance level controls. One thing that we always say in our industry, compliance is not equal to security. But I think you indirectly said it. It's like compliance is on the way to security, right? When you are doing it, you're in that risk-based security mecca.
Yeah, I say security is equal to compliance.
Yeah.
So focus on security.
I guess, as we start to wind this down a little bit, One of the things that I've seen in 2023, and sadly I think is going to continue into 2024, and any of you who are listening right now, time and time again, I see organizations that think that they are in that risk-based level, and they are not. They are in the hygiene or compliance levels beneath that. They think that they are making decisions on what the best use of their money is when they're not even achieving the minimum. And then also I ran in some organizations that said that they were like a 5 out of 5 on a maturity model or optimizing. And I was like, that's unlikely.
Yeah.
And if it is true, you're probably fiscally irresponsible, because unless you're a security company, probably, or some critical infrastructure provider, maybe you don't need to be a 5 across the board. So folks that think that they have a greater level of security than they do, or are trying to fly under the radar and go unnoticed, both have a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that, just to reinforce what you're saying, is, I mean, if we take a look at just our industry and a good pen testing team, how generally, what's their success percentage of compromising a customer on a job, right? 80%, 90%. And I mean, that should give us pause, right? But it almost never does. It's exactly what you're saying. Organizations in general, my experience, are just so incredibly overconfident in where they are from their risk perspective. I mean, even taking something, as simple as like what we saw with the lapsus attacks earlier, where some of the largest companies in the world were compromised by bored teenagers that were just calling their help desk that didn't have identity verification services, right? This is table stakes. This is easy stuff. This isn't, the AI apocalypse coming for us. This is bored teenagers. And it's been that way for as long as we've had computers, right? So I just want to reinforce what you're saying, that, I think most organizations are at more risk than they can even understand.
And I think, and what I was going to say, I think we're part of the problem too. As IT professionals, as security professionals, we want to go in there and our CEO says, "Are we secure?" And we want to affirm to them that we're secure, or we're problem solvers. And we want to solve problems. And so we fix things because that's kind of in our nature. That's what we do. Security is risk to manage. It's not something to solve. And I think there's kind of a difference in thinking. So I was on a call yesterday and talking to the CEO, and he made a reference to very smart developers and they're in the healthcare space, and he referenced HIPAA, but and he was very dismissive over, being secured and dealing with HIPAA compliance. And like, I've got a really smart IT people, and you're just taking our whole industry and just like throwing it to the side, and it's like, no, there's a lot of complexity in securing healthcare information. Put compliance to the side. We're just talking about security, and don't be dismissive of that. Those are big budget line items that you need to be thinking about strategically and managing up that risk.
Yeah, and at the same time that they're not even considering that they've still got XP embedded running on their network, right? For some machine that cost them $10 million, and there's no upgrade path, the vendor's gone, right? And you're stuck, right? No, it's terrible. Yeah. I agree with you totally, Jerry.
Yeah, it is true. I gotta add on that one there, folks. If you are running, that's your dirty little secret, that you're running Windows XP in your environment. Just so you know, just let me in on a secret here. The acceptable number of Windows XP machines to have in your environment is zero. In fact, I would extend that to any operating system that is end of sale, end of life, end of support. Because the key with the end of support ones is, after that, there are vulnerabilities. You're just not aware of them. Even you do the extended support. You're paying a bunch. You're paying a bunch for your extended support. But after that, don't tell your dad. Oh, if he's listening right now, Jerry's dad, retire that XP system. Okay, folks, I think that's been our time today, sadly. It's always a pleasure. I can't believe the time has gone by so quickly. And I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you who are joining us here today to listen to the achievements and aspirations, as well as those who will watch this video when it's recorded. I don't know if we had any questions that came in right now, but we'll endeavor to answer those if any do flow in. But I super enjoyed the time today, and I hope you'll come back again. I'd like to thank Jerry and Chris for offering their insights, and we'd love to partner with each and every one of you in addressing your security challenges. All you have to do is give us a call at CISO Global and let us demonstrate how cybersecurity is a culture, not a product, and have a fantastic rest of your day and the end of this year.